We look at the election of Roy Moore in Alabama against the establishment. And it's not just, Trump went along with it. He said, all right, I'm going to endorse Luther Strange. But when he went down Friday, that's how all this stuff with the NFL started. He was basically trying to distance himself from that endorsement of Luther Strange. He comes down and he gives this rambling thing. Well, on the one hand, this, and on the other hand, that about Luther Strange and Roy Moore. And at the end of it, he says, well, maybe I made a mistake. I don't know. We'll see. and so basically, he just unendorsed him to the extent that Nigel Farage said, I felt at that point, even though he had been contacted by many of the people who had been part of the Trump revolution, and this is people like Steve Bannon at the center of it, but also many people throughout Republican, we got Mark Meadows, we got Louis Gohmert, we got Sarah Palin. There's a slew of people who are real conservatives. Mo Brooks, who was one of the Senate candidates in the primary, had endorsed Roy Moore. There were a lot of people who were Trump supporters, hardcore Trump supporters, the Freedom Caucus and so forth. Nigel Farage said, I didn't want to go there and oppose President Trump on this, but he said he basically took the endorsement back on Friday night, and he did. So it is not as NPR likes to say, this is a defeat for Trump. It wasn't a defeat for Trump. It was a defeat for the establishment. It was a defeat for Luther Strange, the creature of the establishment. It was a big defeat for Mitch McConnell because he put everything he had into this. You realize $30 million on a Senate race? Think about that. Think about how absurd that is. And that was Republicans spending that against another Republican. Why? Because he was not a creature of the swamp. He is not going to do what Mitch McConnell says. Roy Moore is going to do what the Constitution says. Do you understand the difference? There's a big difference. A big difference between what Mitch McConnell says and what the Constitution says. And you're going to need people like Roy Moore if you're going to get the Trump agenda through. And we're going to have more people like Roy Moore. As I pointed out, people were saying before the election, they said, if this happens, it is going to be a big defeat for Mitch McConnell, and you're going to have a lot of establishment Republicans who are not going to run for re-election. And the very next morning, we had one of the worst establishment Republicans say that he is not going to run again. Bob Corker, somebody that Jerome Corsi has written volumes on about being one of the key people pushing back against Obamacare repeal. And I said before this election, I said, let's not run through this Lindsey Graham bill. Let's not do that, the Graham Cassidy thing. Because all we're going to do is make this socialist scheme a little more palatable for people. First, they put the pressure on, then they relieve it a little bit, and oh, that's great. They took off some of that, those onerous taxes and regulations. That's good. We're moving in the right direction. No, you're not. It's a ratchet. Then they're going to ratchet it up after the next election. So I said, let the people feel the pain of socialism. Let them get an appetite to get the government out of our lives before we forget that it was never there before in a way that it is right now. We used to have a free market in healthcare. That ended in World War II, as I pointed out this morning on the radio show. It ended when they came in and they enacted wage and price controls. And then as a pressure relief valve, they said, all right, we'll ease a little bit of that pain by letting the employers deduct health care insurance. So then we wound up with a third-party system. And you broke the connection between the payer and the provider. And you broke the incentives for marketplaces. Now, when President Trump ran for office, he gave us a very detailed plan. He said, these are the things we're going to do. We're going to have markets, not mandates. We're going to have competition, not coercion. We're going to remove the artificial constraints on competition across state lines. We're going to give you ownership of your health care dollar, and you're going to be rewarded if you spend it wisely. We're going to make sure that you have information so that you can spend that wisely. We're going to make sure there's competition so that you can get the cost down. That's the only thing that's going to drive the cost down, folks. You're not going to have the cost driven down by having people in Washington dictate to you. You're only going to have the costs come down when there's competition. You know that. You're Americans. Come on. We know that you only get costs down when you compete. You never get costs down if you regulate, if you tax. They're telling us that it was affordable care. That's the biggest gift we ever gave to Obama when we called it Obamacare. It's not affordable. We should call it not the ACA. We shouldn't call it Obamacare. We should call it the Affordable Care Act. It's a joke. Everybody knows it's not affordable. Everybody knows it was funded on theft from Fannie and Freddie people, the subsidies. We know that the insurance companies, it's a bad deal for them on the individual policies. And so, you know, they're looking for ways to get out of it, to change it and so forth. We don't want the government telling us what we have to do with health care. We want the ability and the information and the competition to have a free market. And the government, which is that one little thing that they did 60 years ago, that one little thing where they broke the connection, the direct connection between buyer and seller, between provider and patient, when they broke that, when they instituted by force, by mandate, this third-party insurance system, that's what began to destroy our system. It took a very long time because it was just one part that they messed up, but it was a fundamental part. And we're not going to allow them to socialize our medicine. We're not going to allow them to take away our medical freedom. And we're going to get people in office. We're going to do it at the GOP primary level because the Democrats are full on to socialism now. They want to go all the way in. Single payer, they own everything. They tell us everything. They own us completely. They can prohibit what we put in our body. They can force things into our body. They have full control over our medicine. That's what the Democrats want. When they say single payer, that means you are their slave for life. And you don't get medical treatment unless you do what they say. We're not going to stand for that. We're not going to allow that. And we've got to get rid of Obamacare quickly. Because if we don't, we'll be stuck with it. Just like we're stuck with the Department of Education. Remember, it was Ronald Reagan who said he was going to get rid of the Department of Education. It was less than 4 years old. It had been created by Jimmy Carter. And instead, after 8 years of Ronald Reagan, he didn't get rid of the Department of Education. Instead, he took it from Rosemary's Baby in the crib to a well-fed adult, if you will. And it's been getting worse all the time. And Obamacare is going to continue to get worse. We do not want anything like Lindsey Graham's bill. Instead, I said, the better thing to do is to let the Democrats own the failure of Obamacare. Not bring it on to the Republican Party and they say, see, you made these tiny little free market changes to it, even though they're not free market changes. You took off some of our regulations and taxes and it all failed. No, let it fail. Don't own it. Let the Democrats own it. Let the rhino Republicans own it. Let people understand that they are the problem. It's the establishment Republicans along with the socialist Democrats, and get those people out of Washington. That's what we need to do. And so that's why I think that, we see Obamacare forever. Maybe it is forever. I don't think so. I think we're going to push it back. And I think we're going to get more people like Roy Moore in there at the primary level. That is what's going to push this back. That is why I am very optimistic after that election last night. It's just the beginning. It's just the beginning, folks. And these forces that are at work, the forces that put President Trump in place, they don't want to talk about it, but there's going to be other places other than Catalonia. There's going to be places in America that are going to want independence. We see this already in California. We've seen it in Texas. You remember when we became a nation, those 13 colonies, they had a population of only about 2.5 million people. They were very concerned that they would be consolidated under a central government. They did not want that at all. They put all kinds of checks and balances to make sure that that wouldn't happen. They first organized as a confederation. And even when they put in the Constitution, they said, well, we're going to split the federal government, and then we're going to split the power between the federal government and the states and the people in various ways. They knew that the real danger was the consolidation of power. And we've seen what that consolidation of power has done to us with globalism, and we're going to start pushing back and demanding that we have more control over our lives. Obamacare is just one of the irritations that is going to drive the devolution of power away from the center. That is ultimately the force that is at work here. That's what's going on in Catalonia. That's why we see all these referenda throughout Europe. That's why the European Union is going to break up. It will break up. It is unsustainable. It is not only an artificial political construct, it is unsustainable from an economic standpoint. People don't want that anymore. We don't want power to continue to concentrate at the center. It's already ungovernable in a nation like this, and we're starting to see the throes of this as we see the deep divisions in the aftermath of this election. What you're seeing here are the polls that are going to eventually bring us a Catalonia-type referendum here in America. And then the question is going to be, are we going to react to it like Abraham Lincoln did? Are we going to react like Spain did? Are we going to start arresting people who would vote for secession? Are we going to start suspending habeas corpus? We'll see what happens. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
In ancient times, man roamed the earth in a constant state of hunting or being hunted. Introducing Caveman, where cutting-edge science meets ancient super nutrients. Secure your bottle right now at InfoWarsStore.com.